Okay, let's dive right into this explainer, because we're looking at a concept today that is honestly going to completely change how you view your own reality, and your decision-making for that matter. We hear a ton about digital literacy, information literacy, AI literacy, but according to a really fascinating technical note by Takasugi Hisataka at the Takasugi Research Institute, we are missing the single most fundamental literacy of all. It's a concept called ontological literacy. Basically, it's the ultimate operating system for your brain, and understanding how it works is absolutely crucial if we want to hold on to our intellectual autonomy in the modern world.
So I want you to start by just taking a second to think back to a time when you, or maybe your whole team at work, just hit an absolute brick wall. You know the feeling, right? You had all the data mapped out, you had the budget, you had the resources, but for whatever reason, you literally couldn't find a way forward. Why does that happen? Well, more often than not, the barrier actually isn't a lack of information or a lack of skill. The mystery is all about our invisible mental boundaries. We get stuck because we're operating inside this invisible box. And the kicker is, we don't even know the box is there.
I mean, think about it. That's impossible. Or, oh, well, that's just common sense. You've definitely heard these phrases tossed around the office, or let's be real, you've probably muttered them yourself while staring blankly at a spreadsheet. We use them all the time. But what this research brilliantly points out is that these everyday phrases are actually massive red flags. They show that we are totally trapped by unwritten rules that are just masquerading as absolute truth. When someone says, "That's impossible," they aren't stating some grand physical law of the universe. They're just revealing a hidden premise about how they believe the world works.
So here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The invisible mind trap. 2. Two faces of fixation. 3. What is ontological literacy? 4. The AI amplification danger. And finally, 5. Building your ontological map.
Starting right off with Section 1, the invisible mind trap.
Let's step into a classic, super frustrating scenario that pretty much everyone has experienced at some point. Imagine a young employee pitching a fresh, new way of doing things, and the boss just instantly shuts it down. Now, on the surface level, it looks like a really simple rejection. The boss rejected my new idea. But look at the ontological level here. This perfectly illustrates how a simple rejection isn't actually about the idea itself. It's about the invisible philosophical scaffolding, the underlying premise that is holding up that boss's entire worldview. That boss is operating in a reality where change fundamentally equals risk, or where the status quo is inherently correct. To them, these premises aren't opinions. They're functioning as reality itself.
And here's where it gets dangerous. When we mistake our own hidden premises for objective reality, we suffer from what the researcher calls ontological fixation. The biggest threat here is that it drastically shrinks your possibility space, and your possibility space is just the total number of options or solutions you can even imagine. When your worldview is fixed, alternative choices literally vanish from your mind. You aren't just rejecting other solutions, you literally cannot see them. It's like your brain puts blinders on. You might figure out how to do a specific task faster, but you completely lose the ability to step back and ask, wait, should we even be doing this task in the first place?
Moving on to Section 2, two faces of fixation.
Let's look at how this builds into something even more pervasive, starting with the individual level. Think about perfectionism. Someone who firmly believes, "I must not fail." That is not just a psychological quirk. In their personal ontological premise, failure is a literal violation of the world's order. It's an impossible event. And that's exactly why their emotional reaction to failure is so explosive. Now, contrast that with the collective level. The research highlights this fascinating Japanese concept of kuki, which translates roughly to reading the air or reading the room. People usually mistake this for simple peer pressure, but it's way deeper than that. It is a shared, unspoken premise in a meeting room where everyone suddenly agrees on one specific reality. It's honestly almost like a shared hallucination where alternative choices completely evaporate. People aren't choosing to stay silent because they're scared. The alternatives have actually ceased to exist in their collective minds. Wild, right?
Which brings us to Section 3. What is ontological literacy? If we're all trapped by these invisible boundaries, what's the antidote?
Well, the antidote is ontological literacy. The Takasugi Research Institute defines this so beautifully. They call it the ability to recognize one's adopted ontological premises and reconstruct them as needed. Think about the actual word literacy. It just means the ability to read and write. So ontological literacy is exactly that, but applied to reality. It's the ultimate read and write capability for human assumptions. You learn to read the hidden worldview that's driving a behavior, and then you learn to write, or reconstruct, a brand new one when the old one just isn't serving you anymore.
To actually achieve this level of literacy, you have to build up 3 distinct capabilities. Step 1 is recognition. Honestly, this is the hardest part. You have to stop and ask yourself, what worldview am I operating under right now? Step 2 is evaluation. You take that hidden premise you just found and judge its actual usefulness. Like, is this premise appropriate for the situation I'm in right now? And step 3 is reconstruction. This is the game changer. This is where you intentionally rewire your worldview. You're not just changing your mind about a random fact, you are consciously adopting a totally new framework for how to view the entire problem. It is literally how you take back your intellectual autonomy. It's really fascinating to contrast how people behave based on their level of this literacy. Someone with low ontological literacy, they jump to super fast conclusions because they never pause to question their own premises. They get incredibly defensive when challenged, they see the whole world in this rigid binary of right and wrong, and they always blame external factors. But conversely, someone with high ontological literacy holds a really healthy distance from their own assumptions. Their personal identity isn't threatened by a new idea because they have a flexible framework. When you give them new information, they don't just ask, "Is this true?" They ask a much deeper question. What premise is this information even based on? So next time you feel yourself getting super defensive in an argument, maybe do a quick check and ask yourself which mindset you're leaning into.
Let's head into Section 4, the AI amplification danger. Why is this specific skill so absolutely critical right now?
Well, it all comes down to artificial intelligence. Here's the crucial point. AI is absolutely brilliant at solving problems, but only within a given frame. Current AI cannot question or change the frame itself. So if you go to an AI with a fixed mindset, that AI is not going to magically correct your worldview. No. Instead, it's going to amplify your fixed human premise into a super echo chamber. It will instantly generate massive amounts of data and proof to completely validate your flawed assumption. If you have a closed mind, AI just builds a faster, stronger titanium wall around it. But if you have high ontological literacy, AI suddenly becomes the ultimate tool to rapidly explore totally new possibility spaces.
Let's look at our final section, Section 5, Building Your Ontological Map.
Let's talk about how you can practically upgrade your mind to prevent this echo chamber from happening. Here are 4 actionable methods. Step 1. Pause the obvious. Use your own strong emotions as triggers. If you feel a sudden surge of anger and you think, "That's completely unacceptable," just stop. That emotion is a flashing neon sign pointing directly to a hidden premise. Step 2. Radically change the question. Instead of asking, "Why is this failing?" try asking, "What is the premise of this project's existence?" Step 3. Literally draw a premise map. Just get a piece of paper and write down your core beliefs about work, about success, whatever it is. Seeing them physically written out completely strips them of their invisible power. And finally, Step 4. Practice this with your team. Make "what premise are we assuming right now" your default question in meetings.
So we're going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over. Are you choosing your worldview, or is it choosing you? Because in an era where algorithms and AI are constantly feeding us information specifically designed to validate our existing biases, the ultimate superpower isn't just thinking harder, it's the ability to step completely outside your own mental framework. Stop letting invisible assumptions run the show, reclaim your intellectual autonomy, rewrite your premises, and completely blow the doors off your space of possibilities.